Go.
So ladies and gentlemen, here we are at the site of the new World Trade Center. You can clearly see number one, one World Trade Center, the new one going up called the Freedom Tower. There have been three eras of the World Trade Center. The first one was in preparation, and then it was actually built, and then of course the construction, and here what we have before us, the new tower, which is now topped up. Initially, the reason why they wanted to put the World Trade Center here was to redevelop the financial district as being a financial power, because after World War II, all of Manhattan's financial stuff, for the most part of it, went to Midtown. And so here they decided to develop. Now, initially the Port Authority took it on, which is a combination of New Jersey and New York working together, and they were going to put it on the east part, but then because the west side's closer to New Jersey, they chose this spot. It's sitting on 70 feet of landfill, and when they dug out all the earth, they created a huge bathtub to keep all the waters of the Hudson out, and they took the earth and created what's now known as Battery Park City. That's new landfill. Now, it was the old building, a brilliant piece of engineering, but not necessarily such inspiring architecture. Created by a man named Yamasaki, Minoru Yamasaki. He was the architect, an American architect, and he had come up with a kind of a revolutionary idea for buildings that were strong, to put all the structural part of it on the outside of the building, and this is steel mesh going all the way up. And it made the building lighter and theoretically stronger. They had it such that it was on shock absorbers, and it would take the sway of winds from 500 years, which was all well and good. It was developed at an enormous cost. It ended up being $1 billion. People were excited, but then when it was done, not so inspiring, really. And one of the most important things you'd think would be great, the views were obscured because the windows were only 18 inches wide. Apparently, the architect had a fear of heights, and he installed it into the building. So here it is. It's now up after 1976, and they're trying to get occupants, and it's slow going. It's after the Vietnam War. The economy's not going all that great, but then something happens that's amazing. A man named Philippe Petit, who had this idea that he'd been bringing with him from years, came up with the idea when he was sitting in a doctor's office. He's a tightrope walker, and he decided he wanted to do this across the Twin Towers, create this. And with a group of his friends, he strung this in 1974 across, and he went across back and forth between the towers 8 times in a period of 45 minutes, doing things like dancing on the rope, jumping up and down on it, laying down on it. People were astounded below, where they were working for 1,000 feet below, and thousands of people were lining up. Now, when the police finally caught up with him, when he crossed the other side, they charged him with no less than 14 misdemeanors. But people loved him. They reduced the charges to just a little bit of community service, entertaining some children in Central Park, and the towers changed forever at that point. All of a sudden, people were attracted to him. He gave the towers character, and they started to get rented out in the 80s. By the time the 90s, Bokong rents it up, and it was actually making money for the first time. So everything's moving along quite well. And of course, then a day which will live in infamy happened, which was a clear, beautiful September day. And I know that all of you have your own idea of what that day was like from where you are and what it means to you. From Boston Airport, 2 planes were launched, and there were others from other parts of the country as well, going to other targets. And the first plane swung around and came to the North Tower and impacted on the 95th to 96th floor, and immediately caused a huge delay. At first, everybody thought this was a horrible accident, but 17 minutes later, at 9:01, another plane came to the South Tower and came in from another angle at 100 miles per hour faster, 540 miles an hour, and exploded into a gigantic, gargantuan explosion. And so you have these 2 buildings aflame. All the firefighters and police that could possibly get down there were there doing whatever they could to rectify the situation. and hopefully fix it. Now, initially, everything was okay, excepting that in the northern tower, there was no escape for the people up, and in the tower where it had exploded at and above. In the southern tower, there was one escape route left on the A stairwell, and a total of 14 escaped from the floor when it exploded on the floor above that. Everybody else below the floors, almost everybody survived, but above that, it was not happening. Now, the flames continued to ensue and being ignited with 10,000 gallons of U.S. jet fuel, causing this huge firestorm to erupt, with paper burning so intensely that it literally started to melt the steel. And just as a man named Pascal Buzzelli was descending down the 22nd floor on the B stairwell of the North Tower, the tower started to collapse, causing a whooshing sound from the wind as it went down. And he blacked out as it was going down. This is where it's said that a man theoretically surfed the concrete slab down. He woke up, came to, saw the sky, thought he was dead, but then he felt pain in his leg and realized that he was not. And immediately, flames were around him. He saw the fire department coming to try to get him, but he thought he was gone, or so, because he'd be burned. So he was looking around desperately for something to cut his wrist, but the fire department did catch up with him, and he did survive that. We all have our own September 11th stories. Mine is that I was called by my girlfriend that day, and she said, Joel, wake up. The towers have been hit by terrorists and they've been destroyed. And I couldn't believe it. And she said, go to the TV and look at it. And I didn't have TV going at the time, so I didn't bother. And what I did is I went outside, and I went over to Central Park West, and I saw this huge stream of people walking up from downtown with the most somberest looks you've ever seen in your life. And for weeks on end, I felt that emotional strain. And with a drop of a hat, I would go sobbing, and I just couldn't release it. Until about 2 weeks later, when Mayor Giuliani inspired us to all get on with our lives. Well, that's when I attended a memorial service, and from that point on, it was time to go. What I remember most is not really the impact and everything, but I remember an article, the front page of the Post. This is Alexander Hamilton's paper for the Foreigner, and on it they showed a picture of towers, and within the smoke coming out of them, you saw this little flecks off of it, off the North Tower. And what they were with the magnifying glasses, they magnified something. There were people who were taking leaps for their lives. About 133 of them were registered as having done this, but they say it's up to 243 actually took this leap. They chose the leap rather than burning alive. And their official death certificates were not suicide. They were listed as homicide by blunt trauma. And you all have your own September 11th experiences, as I say, and from all around the world, there's been a huge outpouring of care for what happened here. And it's obvious that this city and the Freedom Tower means something along that way to everybody. The new tower, let's move to that. That is now topped out, and they're glassing it. It should be ready for occupancy next year. The design was originally, the one that won was by Daniel Libeskind, which was very inspiring. It kind of looked like a crystalline Statue of Liberty. But the developers decided to go another way. They went with David Childs, which is a little more practical, and has kind of a bunker-like look at the bottom, so as to keep it from keeping it bomb-proof. But it does have the same height, which is 1,776 feet, with the tower antenna, and the height of the building itself is the exact same height of the North Tower, so it's identical. The original building sites where the two towers stood is now the site of a memorial, and all the names, all the people who died here at the towers, and along with all the people who died in the original bombing in 1993 there, along with all the rescue workers who were here as well who died. 411 rescue workers here that died, and a total of 343 of them were firemen. More firemen lost than the entire life of the fire department's history. Wow. What a day. What a sacrifice. And they have done a lot, and they continue to do a lot for the city of New York. So here we are the new chapter. We're going to move on now and see what's next.